Hello and welcome to Flourishing, where living well leads to loving better. I'm your host, Angela. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Today, I'm here with a friend of mine, Jessica Young, and I'm so excited for you to meet Jessica. She is a powerhouse mom of three beautiful children, and she's really, really hardworking. She works in medical device sales. I can't wait for you to hear her story and learn more about how she's overcome some things. So let's just get right into it. Welcome, Jessica. Hi, Jess. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to make sure that my pin is not on because I want everyone to see both of us. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here today. This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Thanks for
This is how
having me.
yeah. So I know Jess from high school and I think and middle school, right? We went to the same middle school.
No, I came freshman year, but towards the
That's right.
end. So yeah. But
Perfect.
we did
Okay.
dance together, all the fun stuff for a little bit.
Yes. So that's how we know each other is when we were kids. And
Yeah.
so it's been a long time of communication, not communicating, just kind of doing life. But
Yeah.
we kind of went through similar things. So I'm going to go way back though. And I kind of want to just get started right at the beginning. I kind of want to know when you were a little girl, what did you dream your life would look like? Did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up? I know you kind of had a really cool journey of work, but like tell me a little bit about what you thought life would look like when you were a little girl.
So I think growing up, I had a really rough life with both my mom and my dad, divorced with them, and just going through like the ebbs and flows of being a young person and living in Newbury Park. So it was really kind of difficult, but I always knew I wanted to be a nurse. I was like, I'm going to be a nurse. This is what I'm going to do. I want to help people. I want to work with patients. And I definitely pivoted in a different direction while I still did to do a lot of what nursing is. I pivoted into a different direction. And with all the friends that I have that are nurses, some love and some hate it. I think I made the right decision for me and my family.
Mm,
So kind of making that pivot has really been amazing, but also still getting to work on the medical side of things is fantastic. So
yeah, and I
thank
think
you.
it's really one of the things I love about you is that you've been able, even as a single mom, which we'll get into that journey, you've been able to really do a lot for your family. You've been able to provide homes for your kids, and you did that pretty much on your own, which I really admire. So you've owned homes on your own, and you did that because of the field that you worked in and how hard you worked in working your way up.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
understanding. And I think, my life is exactly where it's supposed to be, even if it's not where I thought it would be, or if it's better than what I thought it would be. And I think that's a huge thing is that when we solidify something, it's going to be this way. This is what I want. This is what is going to be. I mean, my life went in 50 million different directions than I ever saw it going. I
Yeah.
always saw myself as a mom, always saw myself raising kids, being the sports mom, being the cheer mom, which I ended up being.
Yes.
So I think all of those things went as planned, but
Mm-hmm.
the background was ever changing. So it's
Yeah.
like I was never in the same scenery and it just kept changing and evolving, and I would have to divert and change my retrospective view on what was going to happen in my life
Right.
and cope
Yeah.
and be okay with that.
And you're still in California. So I mean, we have friends, this is January that we're recording this. And whenever someone watches this, it might not be January, but so there's fires going on in our hometown. There's fires going on all throughout LA. And we have high school friends who have literally lost their homes because they
Yeah.
live in the Palisades or in other areas in Pasadena, Altadena, where their homes are now gone. And so, just like you said, just having to pivot with whatever life brings.
Yeah.
We're in California and we constantly have to pivot just with the expenses that are ever changing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So in your life of mothering, I would wonder like what was your favorite part about because now you're in a season where they're a lot older and you have a little bit more they have more independence, you have a little bit more freedom. What would
Yeah.
you say was your favorite season of mothering and maybe your least favorite season? Can you tap into that at all?
Yeah. So I think with each of the kids, it's been unique and different. So with each child, my season of mothering has been different. So Chase, I'm loving right now. He's 14. He's in sports. It's so fun to watch him grow and evolve. He's almost 6 foot and I'm 5'2". So he's just this giant towering kid who still actually wants to occasionally crawl in bed and lay next to me, which I'm loving, savoring that for every moment. So right now I'm in a great spot with him. Kylie, I would say my favorite part with her is now. She's 21. She's like, Mom, let's go have lunch. Do you want to get your nails done? Let's go have a drink. Because during the 16-ish, it was gloves were off. It was brutal with her.
Right.
And then Noah, right now for me with him is kind of great, but also amazing with him was, I want to say like 7 to 10. He was just so fun and he had this, his personality was coming out and all the fun stuff was coming out. So for each kid, it's been different. And I think it's going to continue to evolve that way when they have kids or when they get married. And I think I'm just going to continue to have all these different great moments and pivot through them. And some are going to be harder than others, but overall, yeah.
Yeah, I love the way you answered that because every child is so different. They're completely different humans and you enjoy different things about each of them. And then there's just like goods and bads with everything, obviously. But with our children, it's like we have these moments where we just love being around them and we love getting to know them and watching what they're doing. And then there's the pains of just like trying to figure out how to raise them because we've never done it before. We've never met this person before. We've never worked on this, conflict resolution with this individual. And so we're learning as we go. So when people say things like, oh, there's no manual for raising kids, it's so true because you hit these different roadblocks and you're like, I have no clue what to do. And no book I'm reading, no YouTube video I'm watching is really helping me with this specific situation. So it's all just a learning curve. So you end up finding that you just have to love every part of the journey because it can be challenging no matter what.
Yeah.
And when you look back, you're like,
and you get stuck in this moment of like, the one thing I know is I don't want to be like my own parents, right? So you're trying so hard not to be like your parents, but then you're raising these adults and you're like, now I see why my parent might have said that. Even though I didn't listen, even though I was like, nope, I'm doing it my way, you kind of can go, ugh, I get why they said that. I get why they cared about that.
But and you can't have different stories. I don't know. I know your parents were separated and divorced, so you dealt with single parenthood, being the child, and I did as well. So as a single mom, I don't know at what point that exactly started in your kids' lives, like how old they were, but maybe let's talk about that. Like, what was the hardest thing about being a single mom when they were younger?
So it started when Kylie was just turned 9, Noah was 5.5, and Chase was 18 months.
Okay.
So it was insane because when I became a single mom, I had just got accepted to the nursing program. So I had to wrap my head around going into this nursing program that I was going to go into it with a husband who was going to be my support system and financially we were going to be okay, to literally my world being turned upside down in a minute without me ever even having an idea it was going to happen. And then saying, okay, but if I don't continue to do this and if I don't follow through with the nursing program, I will not be able to support my children.
Right.
So there's a sense of fear, there's a sense of passion behind getting it done, but also in the midst of literally falling apart because something happens to you you never see coming. And you're like, what am I going to do? So it was hard. And an 18-month-old baby. And I'm like, oh my God.
Did you live near family? Did you have any family to help you with childcare? Like, how did you do that? How did you, because you finished. So like,
so I had to hire someone to come in because I had clinicals at 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. We did some sort of shared custody, but it really never benefited my school schedule because at the time it was a little bit difficult. So we really just rolled with the punches and I rolled with the punches. I had my brother up here and he would help occasionally. Had my mom, but she had a full-time job. So I had to rely on daycare and a girl that I hired kind of as a nanny who was a lifesaver during my like super hard clinical seasons, I guess you could call it, or clinical rotations. And she was there. She was able to come at like 5:30 in the morning and stay
Wow.
the whole day. And sometimes my brother would relieve her in the afternoon, or my mom if I could get help. But it was brutal. It was brutal. I even look back and people will say, like, how did you do it? I can't even answer that. I have no idea. I have
Right.
no idea.
Because you're in survival mode. And when you're a mom and you're in survival mode and your kids are depending on you, there's no
Yeah.
time to try to like think about how you're getting through. You just get through.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So by the time you're through it, you're like, oh shoot, I made it through that. Don't know how I did it, but I'm sure one day when I look back on it, I'll see like things that I did that helped
Yeah.
me survive. So let's go back a little bit further. When I was in school with you, I remember when all the things began.
Yeah.
I remember you dating. I remember you getting married to the high school sweetheart. You kind of had like the dream thing that we all would want, to marry somebody young
Right.
and marry the person that you date in high school. These are the things that, like, I know women, we are all experiencing a lot of different heartaches at different points in life. And for
Right.
the woman who's going through something right now, um, thinking back on what you went through when you were in your marriage and you realized it was leading to a demise, and there was, you went through some stuff. So if you could tap into what you went to, and then for the lady who's listening who might be going through that right now, like, just kind of share like what you went through and how you got through the pain and the restoration of all of that. I know
Sure.
that's a
Sure.
big loaded question. We can
No,
stop in
that's
between, but you
I'll
know what
kind
I
of start
mean.
from the beginning. We did. We met in high school. And I was going through a really interesting situation with my dad during my senior year saying, well, I'm moving. What do you want to do? Which no parent should ever give that child that decision. I'm thankful, obviously, now that he did, but it was, I'm moving. You can stay and get your own place in Newbury Park, right? As a 17-year-old, or you can figure out some
Wow.
friends to live with. Yeah. And I remember telling Justin, like, I can't live here. I'm working full time and going to school. I can't afford to live here. And I remember his mom was like listening to our conversation, and she's my lifesaver. Love her to death. Still have an amazing relationship
Mm,
with her. His mom, Nancy, just said, you can live with us. I don't want you to go. I know my son
wow.
loves you, but you can live with us. And my senior year, I lived with Justin. I moved in with him.
What?
And yeah, the whole time I was living with
Wow.
him. I know. I don't think everybody knew, but I think like my closest friends knew, Blake knew, Kelly knew,
Wow.
a lot of people knew, but I don't think everybody knew that we were like living together.
Wow. That's
Um,
crazy wild. I
yeah,
did not know that.
yeah. And then
Wow.
before senior year even ended, or maybe right towards the end of senior year, we ended up getting our own apartment. Both of us were working full time. So I was literally going to high school with my own apartment and living with my boyfriend.
What a life.
I know, I know.
I
And
did not know that.
I remember we were paying $1,275 for our apartment, which for two young people was a lot, but
That's
he
a
was making
lot.
decent money and I was making decent money. We were making it work for sure.
You guys were
Um,
living the college life in our senior year of high school.
100%. It was crazy. It was crazy. And I look back on that and I never wanted that for my kids. Even though I loved it, it was great. I had to grow up so much faster than I
Oh
ever
yeah.
wanted to or should have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is some fun stuff to it, but then looking back at it, like, obviously, I look at my parents and I'm like, how could you have let this happen? Like, I needed so much more guidance. I needed so much more support.
Right.
And
Right.
I was thrown into this situation. Obviously, it made me who I am today, right? Like,
Yeah.
we have to look at things and go, this is why I'm who I am today. So I have to
Yeah.
be somewhat thankful for it. But I made sure that my children were going to have a different life. So we got married like 2 years after that. Well, I was 19 when I got married, and he was 21 already. So we got married in 2001, which is crazy,
Yeah.
right
That's
after
literally the year after we got,
2001.
yeah.
So, which seems insane. And we were great. We were living the dream. We had moved up here to the Fresno area, and his job had transferred him up here, gave him a great raise, and I got to kind of sort of be a stay-at-home mom. I was still working at a restaurant part-time 3 nights a week, but during the day, I got to be with the kids and go to school and just function. And we had what I would say was a great relationship. Like we were, we'd communicate, we were raising kids together. We didn't really fight a whole lot. And the fights were stupid, right? They were like, you left your
Yeah.
socks on the floor and you never helped me with laundry. And do I have to tell you to give a kid a bath? Go give a kid a bath. Like little
Yeah.
things that all marriages and relationships go through.
Especially when you're kids and
Right.
getting married as kids, like you're growing together, which is actually a beautiful thing. And
It
I
was
think
amazing.
nowadays society does not encourage that.
Right.
But I think if even with your situation not working out the way we all dream, right?
Right.
I think you can say that getting married young is actually beautiful when both people are willing to grow together, because there's this stuff that you overcome and you don't have those stories with anyone else. You don't have the high school story of moving out when you're 17. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have the story of having your own place during your senior year and working through all that and then having that down the line to tell your kids
Right.
when you're like 70 years old, right? So it is beautiful when both people are willing to continue. So I just love that you guys had that, because even those little trials and many things, like those are normal things. You just have to be willing to work through them. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, continue.
No, no, you're good. And then Kylie, we were already married and we had moved back to Newbury Park, and it wasn't a plan, but it wasn't not a plan. It was like, we kind of did the whole, I guess we'll just see what happens. And I got pregnant with Kylie pretty quick. So that was amazing. And then we had Kylie and everything was good. And then we ended up moving again back up north because Kylie was
Okay.
2 years old and it was so expensive for us to live there. And he got that transfer up here. So we moved up here when she was about 22 months old, which
Okay.
was great. And I was able to kind of sort of stay home, working a little bit at the restaurant and stuff like that, but go to school, focus on my career. Because we knew he worked for Blockbuster and we knew that it would never be the career forever. And one of us needed a career to support the family. We didn't care which one of us it was. And he was such a great provider for as many years as he was, right? Like it was
Yeah.
great. So we ended up staying married. We planned Noah and planned Chase. Like on that second baby, I remember Noah was like 3 and he looked at me, he said, do you think we're done having kids? I said, what do you think? And he's like, no, I want another baby. I'm like, me too. So we were always on the same page. It's not like one of us wanted a baby,
Mm,
one of us didn't. One of us wanted to do this. We were always on the same page and moving forward in like a forward position. We'd have open conversations about things we wanted in life, everything. It wasn't like we just sat there going, you know, who are you? And we were growing together. So fast forward to 2012. So we had been together since what, 99. So however
yeah.
many that is, I don't even know at this point. I think total we were together like 15 years. And so, and
Wow.
we were married for like 12 and a half of them or something like that. So I think, you know, we had Chase, everything's good. And then come February of 2012, Justin gets laid off from his job, which my best friend that I had met here when our girls were 2 in my very first semester of school, who I'm still friends with today. So what, we're going on 19 years of friendship and our
Mm-hmm.
girls are still close. It's the cutest thing. But her dad owned a company and said, had been begging Justin for like 6 months, leave Blockbuster, come work for me. And we just couldn't do it because we would have lost benefits, because it was more of like not an under the table, but he was a small business. He wasn't going to offer all the things that he was getting, 401k benefits. And so we were declining. We were like, hey, if Blockbuster ever goes away, he'll make the move. Well, he lost his job and was laid off the same day I received my welcome to Fresno City College nursing program.
Oh my gosh, that's really bad timing.
Horrible, because I am beyond excited. I'd been on the wait list for 5 semesters. I mean, this was the end goal.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, thank God. And he loses his job. But right away, we pivoted. We're like, we're okay. You can go work with Mark and make the same amount of money you were making. We're going to be okay.
Right.
Felt great about it. Everything's going good. I have my 30th birthday where 70 people come, and all of my closest friends, Blake, Kelly, he invites a few of his coworkers that we were close with, right? There's a girl named and a girl named, and they come to the party, and I knew their families and everything's great. And he stands up at this party and tells everybody I'm his soulmate, his wife, his secretary, the best thing that's ever happened to him. the mother of his children. I mean, he just goes on. And people were like, oh my God, you guys are so cute, your husband and you. And 30 days later, left. Out of nowhere. I came home, like there was no signs. There was no, I'm unhappy in our marriage. There's no, can we sit down and talk? There is, I walk in on a Wednesday night from being at work and there's a bag packed on the front, by the door. And I'm like, oh my God, is your dad okay? What's going on? And he's like, yeah, can we sit down and talk? And his dad was in a hospital in Southern California. And my mind is going straight to that. Like, your dad's dying, something's wrong. And I remember just looking at him and being like, oh my God, your dad. And he's like, it's not my dad. And I'm like, oh, okay, you have to go out of town for work. And he's like, no. And he just looks at me and goes, I just don't think I want to be married anymore. And I'm like, stop. I literally thought the man was joking with me. I could not wrap my head around that this person who I've been with for 15 years just said those words to me. And I was like, no. And yeah, he literally was like, I just don't think I want to be married. And I've been thinking about this. And I was like, for how long? He's like, a couple of months. And I'm like, number one, a couple of months and you're going to throw away 15 years. But number two, you never said a word. Well, I didn't know how to. And I think sitting on a couch, I just remember crying. And our kids were sleeping in their beds, right? And I grabbed the collars of his shirt and I said, please don't do this to our family, like crying. We can go to counseling. What do you need me to change? Like thinking it was all about me, right? Like, I'm like, what am I doing? Am I too fat? Like all these things go through your mind of insecurities. Was I not a good enough wife? What was wrong? And I remember it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm sitting there looking at him and I just said, oh my God, there's somebody else. And he looked at me and he goes, I haven't done anything, but I have feelings for someone. And I was like, and then something flipped in me. And I was like, let me help you pack your shit, for lack of better words. I was like, let me help you.
Let me help you. Let me get that for you.
Yeah, we're no longer begging and crying. Let me get a bag for you. I mean, I was like, this is not happening. But of course, inside just devastated. And I knew right away who it was. And I think that the weird thing is that there were no red flags. There was no like super late nights. There were a couple times he went out with some friends, which I think is totally acceptable in a relationship. He was like, oh, I'm going to go out. We're going to do, drinks and happy hour. And I'm like, go have fun. You can't just be dad all the time and husband. Go.
Good for you.
Coworkers. I just knew it. And I said, is it? And was a coworker he'd had, a girl that I'd taken pictures of her kids. We'd gone to their birthday parties together. And he just looked at me and said, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's her. And I was just like, I grabbed his bag that he'd put like 2 outfits in. And I was like, oh no, my friend, we're packing your drawers. I was losing it, but trying to keep my cool. And as he walked out of the front door with his bag, I remember I looked at him and I said, give me your ring. Because all I could think of, Angela, is that this man is going to go with the ring that we have from our marriage and go spend time with this other woman. Whatever that looked like, I didn't care whether the time was intimate or just whatever.
Right.
And I was like, give me your ring right now. And he looked down at his finger as if he was like, oh my God, I have to take this off and give it to you. And he handed it to me and put his head down and just walked away. And I shut the door and lost it. And I called my friend who I worked with, who's also been my friend for 17 years now. Can we
just take a moment to think about the fact that he was at the birthday party listening to what he said?
Thank you.
I cannot believe that.
Yeah, because I'll tell you.
I can because I've been through stuff like that. But I mean, like, wow.
Right? At the birthday party, listening to this, listening to him just talk up his amazing wife, only to know that something was probably at that moment going on behind my back. Brewing, whether it was actually happening or whatever. So I call my friend and I said, I couldn't even talk, and I barely remember the moment, but she said it was one of the most devastating moments in her life because all she could hear was me say, oh my God, he's gone. And she thought he died.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So she rushes over and opens the door. And I don't remember all of this. She kind of filled me in. She said, I fell to the ground in her arms, just hysterically crying, saying, he left me, he left me, he left me. And I'm glad I don't remember that necessarily. And sometimes it'll come back in bits and pieces. But I think I was in like the worst state of shock, but also like pure disbelief that this was going to be my life. I was like, wait a minute, what just happened to me?
Right.
So I think that was something I never saw coming. I could not have planned for that if I did. I think some divorces, you see the signs, right? The relationship's deteriorating, things are happening. You've been at odds for years.
Complete blindsidedness.
Complete. And of course, like, you know, everybody has their version of the story. And when I've asked him in the past, like, what did I do? He couldn't even ever line anything out. He said, sometimes I just didn't feel heard, which of course in every relationship that is an issue. Like sometimes I didn't feel heard. And so, but we would talk about it, you know, and I just asked, like, was it my weight? Was it, did I not, you know, do enough? What was it? And he would always just tell me, no. And it took me years to realize that this man went through like a midlife crisis at 31,
yeah, at 30.
losing his job. Yeah. And it took me a couple years to realize that, but it was crazy. It was
That's a real thing. And I think more men need to talk about that because that is a real thing that happens to men, this midlife crisis thing. And they do drastic things that change the dynamic of everything going on in everyone's life around them. And then we're all left to clean whatever up is left. Yeah. But it's a real thing. Like we go through cycles every month. We go through menopause, but men also have stuff that they go through and they need support in that. Yeah. They really do. And they don't go through things with someone like another man or a therapist. They just kind of like, they just deal, right? And however they're going to deal. So I love that you said so many things. I loved how you talked about how long it took you to realize that it wasn't you. Like it wasn't your fault. I mean, there's two people in every relationship. So somebody did something, everybody did something, right? So but knowing, like not blaming oneself for the entire thing is really important. I want to talk about that, but I first want to know when you woke up the next morning and had to talk to your kids about why daddy wasn't there. For the 9-year-old, especially your daughter, like, how did you do that?
So first we lied. We told the kids dad's on a work trip, you know, dad had to go, and he did stay away, I think, for 2 days. And then I remember him saying, I said, what are we going to tell the kids? And I think at one point he said, well, let's not put one parent against the other. Let's just tell the kids that we're both unhappy. And I looked at him and said, absolutely not. I will not let my children, no matter how old they are, live with a line of mom and dad decided this together. I said, this was your decision. You have to take accountability for that. So you need to sit down with your kids and tell your kids, you either don't love their mom anymore, you don't want to stay married, whatever it is. In age appropriate terms, you need to take accountability for this. I refuse. And he was mad. I remember he was just like, I think he was obviously mad because he was worried they were going to hate him. And I was worried they were going to hate him. And I would say those 2 moments when we sat down and told the kids, we planned a night and we sat down and Chase was sleeping because he was 18 months old. So he didn't need the conversation. Yeah. But Noah was 5 and Kylie was 9. And I remember we were sitting there and Noah, the sweet kid, just said, well, Dad, do you think you'll still be able to play football with me? Like his mind is 5, right? And of course, Justin tells him, yeah, buddy, me and you are still going to play football and do this. And Kylie looked at him and she said, you are a liar, and went running down the hallway screaming. And I could not have felt like a more broken mom, but also because I still had love for Justin, seeing the look on his face as a dad destroyed me. I was like, oh my God. But there was a reason behind why she said that. A year prior, this girl, my daughter, comes home bawling her eyes out, saying that she has a friend who has the most meanest stepmom ever, and her dad is mean and her mom is sad, and like her friend was going through all this stuff. And Kylie came home and I said, oh, Justin, Kylie had a really hard day. Her friend, who we both knew, has a mean stepmom, and the dad isn't being nice and helping her, and she just hates her life. And Kylie's like, Daddy, promise you're never leaving Mom. And Justin looked at that little girl and said, I will never leave your mom. She's the most person. I will never leave your kids. And the minute he said what he said, all of that must have rushed back to her. And she took off running and screaming, you're a liar. You're a liar. You said you'd never do this. And I was like, took my breath away. And then to look at him devastated, I felt something, right? Like I still loved and cared about him. So I'm like, oh my God. But I was like, yep, you did this to your family. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to raise these kids to love their dad and respect their dad? But knowing the feelings I had about him, and how could I separate that? And when am I going to be able to separate that?
Right.
Because first I wanted to say all the mean things. Your dad's POS, he's awful. He's probably with me. I wanted to say the hurtful things. And instead I was like, your dad's working really hard. He's very busy. Like, it's brutal.
Protecting their reputation while trying to protect our heart at the same time. It's really hard to do the two at the same time, but we do it for the kids, right?
100%.
What was the thing that carried you through this time of healing? Because I know you've healed, and we're going to get to where you are now in life, but before life got better for you, how did you get through all of the pain and the comparison and the seeing the pictures and the videos and the postings on the social media? Like, how did you get through all of that while still maintaining your career, building up your career, and parenting these children? How did you do it? What carried you through?
So the first thing that happened was my sweet friend Sheila said, friend, the man you knew and the man you were married to is dead. Mourn him. Mourn him like you've lost him. He no longer is your husband. And she's been married for 30 years, and at the time she hadn't, but I don't even know why she knew to tell me that. But she said, mourn him like he died. Because if you hold on to who he is and was to you, you will never get past this. And I cannot tell you how thankful I am she said that, because immediately I started believing that the man I was married to and the man I loved died that day. He died. In my heart, in my soul, he was dead. He was still their dad and he was still a person, but he was dead.
Wow.
The love I had.
That is powerful.
Yeah. And so it started with that. But I think also 4 months in, I started the nursing program. And I will tell you, all I could think about was my kids and their schedule and passing every single class and every test I took. I was studying from 8 p.m. when I put the kids to bed after getting home at 6. I was studying from 8 to 1 in the morning, going to bed and waking up at 6 to do it all over again, 5:30. I didn't have time to think about Justin and what he was doing and the affair. I just had to think about, I have to pass this to support my children. Because one thing I knew from day one, and you see a lot of women, they go back to court, they fight for like money and alimony and all. One thing I knew from day one is that when the nursing program's over, I want nothing from him. I don't want to give him the ladder to say, I supported her, I did this. No, I want nothing.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really important to like pass, be successful. Also, my friends, having a friend group around you, to just be there, to get your mind off things, to take you out. My nursing friends I met, amazing. And they happened to all be single. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because I wasn't having to like navigate that. So they were like, I remember the first trip I went on was in December, and it was actually for one of our high school friends' birthdays. And we went, and the guy pool was amazing. And I was like, oh, you like me? Okay. I was like, wait a minute. I have 3 kids and stretch marks to here. And they were like, you think I care about that? I'm like, okay, perfect. So getting myself out there,
Yeah.
finding
I
a
mean,
little bit of
this is 19, this is 17 years old that you started this with him
yeah,
to almost 30. So you're getting back into
yeah,
one person. Yeah.
person.
One person, girl.
Yeah. It's a
And then
long
you go, that's a long
you
time.
don't even know what's out there
I
in
know.
in every aspect. You're like,
Yes.
yeah,
Same.
yeah.
Yes. So then
And
you get out there and you're like, oh, wait, you mean,
wait, what?
wow.
So there's,
Okay.
there's aspects of it that were amazing. Finding
Yeah.
myself, finding out who I
Yeah.
wanted to be. I started focusing on me because I think we as moms, but I think parents in general, we wrap ourselves up. Justin's wrapped himself up in his job and his
Right.
identity was in his job. My identity was in raising children,
Mm-hmm.
cooking and cleaning, being a good
Mm-hmm.
wife,
Mm-hmm.
making sure I'm meeting my husband's intimate needs, all
Mm-hmm.
of it. And a lot of people think, I do want to say this because I think people immediately go to, and I hope this isn't like out of bounds for the podcast, but people go to like, oh, he must have cheated on her because they didn't have an active sex life.
Right.
Beyond not accurate.
Right.
I mean,
I
the
understand.
night before he left, on his initiation, things were happening. Like
Yeah.
we're talking nothing. I didn't miss a beat. He didn't miss a beat. We were very active on a regular basis. And so I think people want to go to like, oh, this was sad or this wasn't happening or he
Yeah.
didn't. No, no.
No.
And anything, if anyone would have left for that reason, it would have been me because I was a little bit more of a firecracker than he was, if that makes any sense. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but again, we talked about those things. We had conversations. We were open with each other.
So you
So,
had communication, you had the sex life, you had a plan, you guys were working together on a plan.
but
So
you know
what
what?
wasn't there?
What wasn't there was a strong man. I had a weak man. I had a weak man that I mothered to death and promised I would never do that again because
Wow.
he went from his mom to me and he never learned how to really and I say this lightly because of course he was a man. He provided for our family, but he really never learned how to be a man that stands on his own.
Right. And that's what people do in a marriage when they marry young. They learn how to do that together if they're willing to.
Yeah.
He just wasn't willing to. He gave up. And he could have, you would have been patient to work with him, most likely. You would have been patient to work with him through growing into that man. Because
Oh
that's
yeah.
what you do when you marry young. You grow together. He was not willing to do that for whatever reason.
No,
Yeah, well put. Well
and I
put.
see I
I'd have to
see
agree.
I've seen that phrase that says, people will leave a relationship for 20% they're not getting and they'll forget about the 80% they have. And let me tell you, this poor man did that. He whatever 20% he needed that he neglected to tell me about, whether it was like more compliments or more or lifting him up or more masculinity that I needed to give him back, or maybe I emasculated him, whatever it was, never told me. Still to this day, I haven't gotten answers on that. So I don't even bother.
Right.
But he left for 20%. And
Yeah.
I don't want to like necessarily put down their relationship, but from what I know, all he gets now is 20%. So
Well,
he,
and that's the thing about not watering your own grass.
yeah,
It's never that. I mean, I'm in the same situation. Like I can say the same exact thing, but when you don't water it,
it
it
does.
dies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just go to someone else's grass and start mowing their grass, then that's someone else's grass. That's not even your grass. So like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? So I can understand that. But what I heard you say when you talked about what carried you through, it was that you had a person in your life that spoke wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
you had something going on in your life, you put something in your life and kept something in your life that allowed you to focus on something other than him. And it
Right.
all had to do with you growing, you developing, and you becoming the person that you needed to become for you and your kids.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you said that's so huge is you had community. So your community, you mentioned that you had friends that you've known since high school.
Yeah.
And then you had these new friends, this new community in your nursing program.
Yeah.
What when I was going through very, very, very similar things, um, I went through a lot of it alone because I didn't have I was really scared to tell people things because I didn't want them to be mad at him. I didn't want them to not like him because I always felt like I was going to go back. So I really felt like I think my reason for it being so long, the delay and like really letting go was because I didn't have a solid community around me to like that I could trust to help me be guided through the decision. So tell me about like your community. I know you said you had friends from high school, but
Yeah.
what
So,
else was this community like that allowed you to kind of grow through this?
yeah, I think, okay, so Blake and Kelly are literally still my two best friends from high school.
Yeah,
I still
love
see
that.
them. I still talk to them all the time. Blake more than Kelly because she's busy with her new baby. But I mean, we talk
Yeah,
all the time. And I think, I had them who had been with us from day one, right? So I had their aspect of it. And I mean, everybody was astonished from his mom to our friends to family. They were like, something's not right here. Is there drugs? Like everybody had their questions of what's going
mm,
on. And Blake and Kelly were at that birthday. So they were like, there's no way. And then
right.
I had my girl group of friends that I met, like my friend Sheila, who's the one that told me to mourn him. Our kids met in kindergarten. I met her that day, and she's been a rock for me in my life ever since then. And then I also had my nursing school friends. So I had all these different pivots of groups of
Yeah,
friends, which I could talk to and, bend everybody's ear. I was talking
yeah,
constantly. I'm a talker. So I had to talk it out and talk it out and talk it out. And um,
right.
I think it just helped me get so many different perspectives, but also I wasn't alone. Even
Yeah,
though no matter how not alone you are, you feel alone because he was my
yeah,
best friend. He
yeah,
was my best friend. He
yeah,
saved me from my super shitty childhood. And
right.
he became my safe spot until he wasn't.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so then I had to lean on my friends and myself for my safe spot. But when you have
Mhm.
these three little people looking at you, I mean, they become your purpose, your meaning, your everything. They always were,
Mhm.
right? They're always, you look at your kids, you're like, you're the reason I want to be a better mom, a better person, a better this, a better that.
Yeah,
But when you go through a divorce, they're your reason to keep going. Because now I remember just laying there thinking, not that I wanted to kill myself or die, but I remember thinking, if I wasn't here, I wouldn't be sad anymore. But then I
mhm.
remember I thinking, absolutely not. Like I have these
Yeah,
two amazing kids. I want
yeah,
to watch them
yeah,
grow up and graduate and go to prom and have babies and kids and all of that. And
yeah,
immediately changed my thought process on that. No, I'm
yeah.
gonna be
Love
here.
that.
But then also maybe a part of me was like, I'm gonna show you didn't break me.
Mhm.
Watch me
Mhm.
rise
Mhm.
and let's see what happens to you.
Right.
And not that
Yeah,
I wanted him to fail or
right.
anything bad to happen, but I somehow knew in my heart that, like, if my childhood didn't break me, this man wasn't going to break me. And I was going to rise and move on. And I was going to be okay. And whatever was going to be with him was no longer my problem.
So yeah, what was your faith in? What was your faith in at that time, and what is your faith in now? And then
Uh,
I'd love for you to share kind of where your life is at now. But what did you have faith in? Like, it sounds like your faith was in your friends and in your school and in Sheila, like and in your kids, really, in parenting. Is that where your faith was every
that's
day
where,
when you woke up?
yeah, I'd never been very religious. And I mean, I definitely always believe in something higher than myself for sure, which
Yeah.
is why I still stick to this happened for a reason. I
Yeah.
wasn't meant to spend my life with him. He was
Right.
several chapters, but not the full book.
Right.
It's why I believe I went on to nursing, but never actually worked in nursing and went right on to doing what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
It's why I believe that like there is a greater power out there that points us in better directions,
Yeah.
whether we realize it or not. Um, Obviously, we're our own planners and we make decisions that impact that, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
path is kind of set before you to take the path, and what path you take
Mm-hmm.
determines where you're going to end up. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, it was my friendships, it was knowing I wasn't alone even if I felt alone. It was persevering through knowing what I had to achieve and where I wanted to be. So there was
Yeah.
always at the end of the table, at the end of the tunnel, that I wanted to just be up here. And not up
Yeah.
here
And
just in general, I wanted to be
you wanted to
okay.
be, yeah, absolutely. And I love that, because when I do think back about talking to my friends when I was going through stuff, I was constantly moving around. So I was like away from people that I really trusted and away from like really close people. But I knew there were people I could call on. I just chose to do a lot by myself. And I think that made it a lot harder for me. So when
Sure.
I did tap into my community, when the time did come for me to do that, it was so much easier. It was so much easier for me to grow and to move through when I allowed people into my life and into the space that I was in. But it was just so painful and so embarrassing and humiliating all the time that sometimes it was hard for me to do that.
You don't
Um,
want to be judged.
yeah, you don't want to be judged. And I was judged a lot because I kept going back too. I love that you like closed the door and you were like, no, that's not happening here. So
But also,
now,
but also to go back. I mean, you were holding on, and nothing's wrong with what you did. Holding on to the idea of you came from a single family household. You didn't want that for your
right.
children. You
Yes,
didn't want to do this alone. You did.
right.
So, I mean, no
That's
matter
right.
what the situation looks like, I think we judge each other too harshly
Yeah.
because we're not in that situation.
Yep.
So no matter what the situation is, I think a lot of times I try to take judgment off the table, even if I don't agree with
Absolutely.
the situation, take the judgment off the table and just embrace where your friend is at. She's hurt. She's sad. She's confused. She wants to go back because she has a bigger idea of what's there. So I think it's so hard
And
because
honestly, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't go back and redo anything because it has made me who I am today. And I don't think I would have gotten there another way. I think this is how I had to learn. And
yeah,
it also made part of my kid's story what it is. And although there's things I've had to like get over as far as regret is concerned, I'm so
right.
grateful
Yeah,
because it's brought me right here
yeah,
today where I'm at. And I don't think I would have gotten there any other way because I
yeah.
wouldn't be who I am.
And also, I think we say to ourselves, like, I think one of the things I've seen even in my current relationship when you try is like, you want to be able to say, I did everything I could.
Yeah.
I gave X amount of chances. I tried. And for
Yeah.
me, the day that I closed that book, if I'm being 100% honest, the day he left, the day I packed his stuff, I don't know if the book was closed. Who's
Right.
to see if he would have come back 3 months later and been like, I made the biggest mistake of my life, that I would not have given us another chance. I
Right.
will say he didn't come back 3 months later, but we got to December and I remember thinking, like, they were living together at this point, and I remember thinking, how embarrassing. Like, we're still married. He hasn't even filed for divorce. He's living with another woman, raising our kids with another woman. And I went and I filed for divorce in January and of that next year. So that would have been 2013. And I remember he got served paperwork, and we showed up when he showed up to do the exchange of the kids. We met at like a local grocery store for some reason. We didn't have that in the court order or anything because there wasn't one. We just met. We went to exchange the kids, and he holds the papers up and says, "What's this?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what's this? This is 8 months in the making, my friend. What do you mean?" And he's just like, "Well, I don't know." And he literally looked at me and was like, "I don't know if this is what I want to do." And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Now, mind you,
Sorry.
yeah,
That
mind you,
decision a month ago.
I had already gone like on one date in December and then like maybe 2 dates in January. And I was like, well, this is what I want to do. So here you go. We're good.
Yeah.
I mean, I had had a whole awakening moment with dating and getting out there that
But
I was
you
like,
had 8 months of
yeah,
him not coming back and living
yeah,
with this woman and taking care. Yeah,
yeah.
no, I totally understand.
And he was like, well, I need to look over these and I'm not sure if this is where I want to be and what I want to do. And I said, that's not my problem. And I took my kids and I left. And I didn't hear anything from him for 2 weeks as far as the papers go. And he asked if he could meet me in private. And I thought, oh God, here we go. And he showed up and he said, I signed the papers, but I need you to know why. And I was like, okay. And I thought maybe I was going to get some clarity. And the clarity I got is that he was expecting a baby. Like, wait, what? I was like, you're what? And I just looked at him and he looked at me and said, verbatim, it was a mistake. We didn't plan this. And I said, that is a shame. It's a shame that you can even say that because all three of our children were planned and wanted and discussed, and it was never a mistake. And I'm not saying that when you have a baby because you didn't plan it, it's a bad thing. I'm just saying to look at me and utter those words, I was like, and I just looked at him and I was like, you are the dumbest person I've ever met. And I scooped up my kiddos and I left, or I went and picked them up afterwards and I left. And I really never looked back after that moment. I was like, you are literally creating your own situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew early on, like I said to myself, and we had this discussion that if for some reason we were ever together, which we never used the D word, right? We never talked about divorce. But I remember one time I said to him, do you think if we're ever not together? And he's like, why would you say that? Panicked, right? And I'm like, no, it's just saying that you would ever have kids with somebody else. He goes, oh my God, no, I never want kids with somebody else. And he goes, I never want to deal with like that step parent situation and going through this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, me too. Well, I stayed true to that. I was like, we are never having another child. I'm not having children with anybody else. And I was 32. I easily could have had more children.
Yeah.
And I had locked it up. I was like, we are done. And anybody I met, I was very clear to, like, I am not having more children. I have 3. If you have any, that's great, but we are not doing this yours, mine, and need to have ours. That wasn't going to be my story. So very soon after that, I was just like, oh boy. And then the emotions come with that, right? Like he's going to see another woman have a baby. This is something we shared.
Mm-hmm.
And all your mind goes through all the emotions of like, will he be a better dad to her kid?
Yes.
Will he be a better husband to her? Will he, you know,
all of those things. Yes, totally understand.
Yeah. And then I was like, no. And then somebody else said something to me, or I saw it somewhere, and it was like, she got the man you had, not the one you wanted. And thank God that resonated with me because I'm like, nope.
I so wish someone had told me that because I was constantly thinking that all the work I had put in for 18, 20 years was going to be used on someone else, like benefiting someone else.
No,
that did not happen. But like that's the fear, right? You're just like, I put in so much time, I put in so much work, and then this other person's going to get that. Yeah. And these other children are going to get that and not the ones that we created together. Like what?
Yes.
Yeah, the pain of that. So like, where are you today? Like, where is your life today? And how did you get there?
Okay.
It's been years now. Yeah. How long has it been? And like, how did you get there?
So officially we're going on 13 years as of this year.
Oh, man, we're like on the same time.
Right. Too bad we didn't chat then. We might've been good for each other. I know. So I think, within the first year, one of the things I will say is I told myself this. I don't want to be one of those families whose parents hate each other. I don't want to be one of those families whose mom sits on this side of the bleachers, dad's over here, they don't talk. I didn't want to be that. I also didn't want to be like, hey, you want to come over for Christmas and birthdays with your wife who's your affair, right? So
I did that. I shouldn't have, but I did that. It didn't work out, but I did that.
Right?
Way too nice.
But it's like you want to find a middle ground that works for both of you. So was I on board with being like, let's do everything together? No, especially because I had to look at this woman who also left her husband the same night. And this, what I didn't know initially was that this was a plan. I literally thought it came out of left field, but turns out about a week before they had met and discussed leaving their spouses. Her
Oh,
husband,
I didn't know.
she was
Oh
married with
man.
2 kids, and we had our 3. So when they got together, they had 5. And then they had another one, which makes 6. But they had the conversation through text where her husband had sent me the text where it said, I'm leaving tonight. And his response was, I'm going to leave Jessica tomorrow. Like there was a plan, which makes me sick because it's like here, and he slept with me. He slept with me knowing that that was a plan. And I'm like, what, did you need a last hurrah, buddy? Jesus. So it was emotionally draining to find those things out. But I knew I didn't want us to be on the Great Divide. I also knew I wanted us to co-parent the best we could and raise our kids in an environment where they still respected their dad's feelings. They still respected mine. We were on the same page. So very early on, we kind of implemented stuff like if they're grounded at your house, they're grounded at my house. Good. Even if I think your reason for grounding them is ridiculous, I'm going to support you as that parent and making that
great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And we kind of just stayed on board with those things. Like we were going to, have sports. Now, don't get me wrong. We went through the rigmarole of ups and downs. We went through a bitter custody battle right as I was finishing the nursing program because he didn't want to pay what he was paying at the time. And he said, my wife is a stay-at-home wife. She can stay home and take care of our kids. And I was like, you'd fight me for custody so they could be with her and not their mom? And the long and the short of the answer was yes, which there are certain things I'll never forgive him for. That's one. You fought me for custody because of a dollar amount and took my custody away because in the state of California, it's 50-50 unless you can prove that's a bad dad or a bad mom. And so he won and we went into 50-50, which Chase by that time was 4. Still super hard pill to swallow because one of the things you never plan for is when you go in to have a baby with somebody, you never plan on sharing those weeks. You never plan on not having them there every day, not needing you every day. You don't plan on these things. And so all of a sudden you're thrown into this situation where now you have to share your children and you have to share them with him and another woman now. And you're like, is my baby going to be loved the way I love him? Is somebody going to love him the way I love him? What if he needs to be cuddled and held? And he was a super clingy baby. He wanted to like touch you all the time and be up on you. I remember thinking like, as much as I don't want her to love my kid, I need her to love my kid because he needs.
So he doesn't get deprived.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he used to tell me stuff like, he doesn't love me. And I'd be like, why do you say that? And he's like, she never hugs me. He's like 5. And I remember having a talk with Justin. I need your wife to hug my kid.
Right.
I need her to hug him. I need her to care about him because we're going to affect how he feels, Yeah. And I think I put in my notes that I wanted to talk about how you navigate your children's emotions with it when the questions come of like, why did dad leave you? And, when is an appropriate time to say what your truth is, even if it's not his truth? And for Kylie, that was like 15. She said something at like 10 or 11, but I blew it off because I knew she wasn't age appropriate to like face the reality of what happened. But at 15, she was like, Mom, she was like 14 or 15. She goes, just tell me, like, what happened? And I told her exactly what happened. I left out some of the details, but I literally just said, this is what happened. And she goes, I knew it was an affair the whole time. I knew it. When I said to you at 10, dad was with you and then with her husband and then they were together. Because within 3 or 4 months, Justin was like, we're going to hang out with within like a month, he's like, we're going to hang out with my friend and her kids. And within like 3 months, they already had an apartment. I mean, man.
And kids are really smart.
Yeah. And Noah took a little bit longer. He I think asked me later, but I always said to my kids, even Kylie, look, dad made a bad decision. It doesn't make dad a bad guy.
Right.
He's not a bad dad. He's still your dad. He still loves you very much. What he did to me isn't what he did to you, but it is.
It
because
is, because it definitely affects them
every
just
decision
as
you
much.
make as
Yes,
a parent changes your
absolutely.
children's life. And I think
Absolutely.
Kylie and I had that really transparent conversation. She goes, Dad, I remember she said, Dad ruined my life. And I said, don't ever give somebody that much power.
Ooh, that's a good line. Don't
Ever.
ever give someone that much power.
He didn't
Wow.
ruin your life. He made things happen in your life that made life a little bit harder and sadder in certain times. But you get to rewrite your whole book when you're
That's
18.
so good.
It's your book. You do what you want with your life. You have a relationship that you want. You rewrite that. Your parents only
Mm,
have this much. I said, otherwise, we'd be sitting here saying, Grandma and Grandpa ruined my whole life. Did they? She goes, oh,
right.
okay. So
Right.
the navigating
So
their
good.
emotions, even today with Chase, like, I don't want to go to dad's because um, makes gross food, or like all the things kids come up with. Dad is,
Yeah.
you know, so they had their baby a year and a half later, and then 2 years ago they had another baby. Why? I don't know. Again, I was told we didn't plan for this. It was an accident. I said, you do know how this happens, right? Like, we're clear on that. And like, I'm pretty sure the vasectomy was scheduled about 6 days later when she found out she was pregnant. But
Wow.
can he be the dad he was to our kids? No, because now he's spread between 7 of them. And I think there's a lot of resentment my kids have, and they'll talk to me about it. And
Mm,
for whatever reason, they don't really talk to him about it. And I try to navigate it because I'm going to validate how they feel because it's real.
of course.
But I also try to just still tell them their dad is doing the best that he can for them, whether it's financially, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. He's doing what he thinks is right, and he's doing the best that he can. But
Mm,
we have been able to provide such different lives because of our choices.
right.
And I think that is a very tough pill for Justin to swallow. And as much as we co-parent good, as much as we get along, we sit together at basketball games. My boyfriend's there next to us at the basketball games. They talk and they can, say hi to each other. And I'm fine with it because, again, he's her problem. He's no longer mine. And
Mm,
she gets the guy I had, not the one I wanted. And so, and
mm,
I mourned the guy I had.
yeah.
So he's hers and they're theirs, and that's fine with me. But I definitely will say that, like, there are certain things that come up when a kid graduates. My daughter one day getting married, those things
Hmm.
like resonate with me because we were supposed
Yeah.
to do this together,
Right.
and he robbed me of that
Right.
without any input from me. Any input, any say, any ability to fix it, nothing. Not that I had to fix it. I clearly know
Right.
it wasn't me to fix, but
Yeah. um, you mentioned boyfriend.
yeah.
So, and I know that you've, purchased homes and you've been very successful financially, you've been very successful emotionally, all of the things. And you seem to have a very good insight to your spiritual life, like all that stuff. So tell me about how, this new relationship and how long it's been and how you moved into that without the baggage and all of that.
Yeah. So I dated for about a year and a half after Justin and I went our separate ways. I started dating like the beginning of 2013, and I ended up meeting my now boyfriend, Daryl, in the end of 2014, like November. So
Okay.
it was a long time I got to date, almost 2 full years. And I had the time of my life. I learned so much about myself, but and I actually went into a situation with him where I didn't want anything serious, and neither did he. He was just out of a 15-year relationship. I was still in my dating era. And I remember I met him and we had really good connection, conversation. We were just all on the same page. And we went fast. I mean, I think within 3 days, he's like, I want you to be my girlfriend. And then within 6 months, he moved in. So it went really fast. Not too, I mean, I don't think he met the kids for like 3 months, and nobody had ever met my kids. Nobody in
Okay.
all that time. Like, never. They were like, Mom, you didn't even date. I'm like, oh, yes, I did. just when you were not around ever.
That's
But
awesome.
when I met Daryl, so we've been officially together. We just hit our 10-year anniversary. And
Wow.
just like every
Wow.
relationship, it's had its ups and
Ups
downs.
and downs. Yeah.
Yeah, things that, I got the husband she had. So there were a lot of like,
Hmm.
bringing him in. He has one daughter. And so he came into the relationship, and she is 2 years older than Kylie. So when he came into the relationship, it's like, and she primarily lived with her mom, but came and stayed with us from time to time, which I've had
Hmm.
a good relationship with her. Um, but yeah, it's been good. And I, when I first met Daryl, I was just out of the nursing program, to be honest.
Okay.
And I went immediately to work at a doctor's office because the doctor had asked if I would come help at his practice. He said, I know you're not licensed yet, but I can have you do a bunch of off license stuff, procedures. And I did that for like 2.5 years and worked at the restaurant I was working at still. So I was pulling two jobs.
Wow.
I would go to work 8 to 5, get off, and go. On the nights I didn't have my kids, from 5 to 10, I would go to work. And I did that for 5 additional years. Yeah, it was crazy.
What?
Yeah. I did it just because I wanted the extra money, and Justin and I weren't exchanging really money anymore at that point. At the point we went 50-50, our all the rest. So 2 years in, we stopped exchanging money. We stopped doing that. And so
Wow.
I really just wanted to be able to provide for the kids, and
Yeah.
2 jobs. And waitressing's great, right? You go to work for a couple hours, you make $200. I did that 3 nights a week. It was an extra $2,000 a month for me. I
Yeah.
needed
That's
it.
fantastic. Yeah.
So I did that, and then COVID hit, and I stopped doing that. But when
Mm.
I met, or when I was at the doctor's office, I was meeting reps that were coming in, and I was understanding like what their role was and all this stuff. And they were like, you literally need to become a rep. You're so good at bridging the gap. You get it. You get the business. And I was like, no. And I just blow them off because I thought it wasn't in my wheelhouse. I was like, oh, I'm going to get my NCLEX. I'm going to pass my NCLEX, and I'm going to go be a nurse. And I finally, like 2.5 years in, put myself on LinkedIn, and I got recruited by a company who did wound vacs, and I had already done wound vacs in nursing. So I was like, okay, I kind of know how to do this, and I kind of get it. And he hired me like that. And
Wow.
my income went from here to about here. It was a little bit of a bump up. I think at the time it was like I was making like 48,000, and I went to 65 or 70.
And what is wound backs? Like, what does that
So
mean?
I was a wound vac rep. I worked for 3M. So patients that have major traumatic injuries, loss of leg, open incision, any of it, they get this vac put on. It's like a sponge that goes in the wound and eventually helps the wound grow together. It forms new tissue,
Mm.
granulates tissue. So I was clinical and I was sales. There was a sales component to it, and there was a clinical component. And so
Wow.
hospital, putting these on patients, teaching nurses how to use them, teaching physicians why we use our specific one. I was going to meetings, I was going to wound conventions, like the whole deal. And the perks of the job, I was like, wait, what do you mean I don't pay for gas anymore? What do you mean I don't have to pay for a
Yeah.
car anymore? You got a company car, you got a gas
Yeah.
card, and you got a good salary. And like I said, at the time, I think it was like 65-ish with a potential to make 90 with additional bonuses. So it was
Yeah.
pretty good. Like I felt like,
Yeah.
oh man, I took a huge leap up. And then as time went on, I was with that company for almost 5 years, 4 years, 4 months. And I started realizing that I wasn't going to be able to grow in that position.
Hmm.
And I kept looking, and I got recruited by like 4 more companies. And then I was interviewing with like 9 companies. And I
Wow.
realized like how marketable I was. But in between that
Yeah.
time, 3M and COVID, I actually got my bachelor's degree online because I was like, oh, I better get my bachelor's degree. I'm going to need it. And so I did that online, which took me like, I think it's like 16 months for that program that I did.
Yeah.
I already had quite a few units and credits. So got my bachelor's degree. And then all these other companies were looking at me because with a bachelor's degree and a degree in nursing, even though I wasn't a nurse and practicing as a nurse, I had a degree in nursing.
So you never went to do the NCLEX, like you never did that part.
No, I did take it, and I failed during the divorce and during a custody battle. And after that, I was like, we're good. We're good. And not to say that I won't go back
Awesome.
and get it someday,
Yeah,
but
but that's so cool how that all panned out.
it just panned out that way. And
Wow.
then so 2 years ago, after I stopped working for 3M, I've been with the new company ever since, and I am loving it. And my income went obviously to a whole nother place,
Yeah.
and company car and the gas card. And it just allows you to have so much freedom. So I definitely do my job every day, but right now, technically it's a work day and we're having a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have some flexibility in that. I get to make my
Right.
schedule. I'm not missing out on anything with my kids. I get to be a mom. I get to go pick them up from school if they're sick. I get to be the mom I want to be, but
Wow.
also be the mom I want
Provide.
to be, showing them that the job, the providing.
Yep.
Um, 2.5 years ago, I bought a house by myself, not even with
Yeah.
my boyfriend. He was in Switzerland
Yep.
working for 6 months. I bought a house. We lived in it for a couple years. And then I was like, okay, we need a bigger house. I want something different. And bought this house and kept the other house. And so things have just
So now you
allowed
have cash flow coming from that house as you
a little
invested.
bit, a
Yeah, but
little. Yeah,
it's like you need to, yeah, you could teach a lot of things about how to manage life when it turns upside down. That's
literally
awesome.
upside down and spinning in like a whirlwind of what am I going to do? And
And
I
it's
think,
really interesting to me that you didn't. So you know my faith. You know that I walk as closely as I can with God, and I really believe in
yeah,
that. And it's interesting to me to hear different people's perspectives on how to get through things. Because some people will say, "Oh, Christianity is lame. Like Christians just are weak and they can't depend on anybody, and so they have to have this like fake God or whatever, just whatever." And I'm not like ashamed of that. I'm like, I am totally fine with saying I'm weak. I'm totally fine with saying like I need something else. But I also know that I'm not weak. Like I am a very strong woman. I've overcome a lot. And
yeah,
I believe that I did that not only because of my will and my ability to, my grit and my desire to like be there for my kids, but also because of the higher power I believe in, which I call God. And I say that God carried me through. God was the reason that I could do all these. But I love also hearing how people do it that don't, because I'm always like, how I don't think I could have done it without God. So I always
sure.
wonder how people who do not carry that same weight of faith, how they get through those things. So
Yeah.
it's so fun, like hearing how you made it through, because my hope is that all kinds of women will listen to this podcast and that they'll hear, well, maybe I don't believe in God, or maybe they believe in, they're like you, they believe in a higher power, but they're kind of like, well, I don't know, but they
Yeah.
still know they can get through. They still know
Yeah.
they can walk through something dark like this and get to the other side and have
Yeah.
this turnaround story like yourself, this restoration story like yourself. If there was anything that you would want to make sure you tell someone walking through that right now, like what is the advice that you would give a woman, young woman, maybe someone like yourself, 20 something going through something like this? Um, or somebody our age now going through this, what would you tell them? What would you tell that woman right now?
I think you have to live in the moment and embrace it, but know that that moment is not forever.
Right.
It too will change.
Yes.
And it might get harder before it gets better. But I think for me, and I hate to say this in like a way that if him or his wife or anybody saw it, they would assume I'm saying I ended up on top. But I'm not saying it that way. But
Mm-hmm.
you will end up on top if
Mm.
you persevere through it, if you walk through it, but feel it. You have to go through it. You can't just think you're gonna skip it. It's here. You have
Yeah.
to embrace it. You have to like work through the hard moments, continuously make plans to like what's next, like pivot. Because when I didn't pass my NCLEX, I could have been like, okay, well, I'll forever just work at this doctor's office. No,
Right. Right.
no, I'm not going to forever work at the doctor's
Right.
office. And even now, I love my job. But in a year, if I'm offered another position and an increase in salary and so on and so forth, I'm going to pivot to that. I'm always going to continue to improve myself,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, because like nobody gets to define your story but you. So don't let some guy that decided to leave you make that your story. And then like I think also I would just say like learn to feel sorry for him instead of resent him.
That's
I
so good.
I
That's so
feel
good.
sad for him. He
Mm-hmm.
changed his whole life on a whim.
Yep.
And whether it's good or bad, it's not up to me to decide if his life is good or bad, or if he's happy or sad. It's not up for me.
Yeah.
But he changed everything. And he's 45 and has 7 children that he's responsible for. Granted, his wife's dad, their dad is in the picture. But he's got 7 kids he's responsible for. He's got a 2-year-old who's going to graduate when he's 62 years old. He's got stuff. And I've got Hawaii and trips and kids graduating and moving on. And I've got, I can go where I want, when I want, and no diapers. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. They're in their season of happiness and raising children. And I am in my season of what do I want to do now? So it's not, but to live in this resentful nature of like, let's hate him forever. Why? It only hurts you. It only hurts you to hate somebody that much. You can be mad at what they did. I will never, ever forgive him for the things he's taken from me. Raising grandchildren together. Like, you don't get those things back. We're not raising kids together or grandchildren together anymore. They're going to come here and sit on my boyfriend's lap and my lap and spend time with us. And then they're going to go to that house. It's totally different. There are things I will never forgive him for. Changing our children.
Do you think that lack of forgiveness that you're planning on hurts you at all?
No. Because I these are all things that are true and happening. Like I will raise grandchildren by myself, and he will always be the reason that is the case. So when I say like, I'll never forgive him for that, I just mean like, I'll never be able to say to him, it's okay, you did what you did, or I forgive you for that. But I'm not going to hold resentment towards him for it. I'm not going to be like, it's your fault we're not raising grandkids together. So for me, those are totally different things.
Okay.
I guess, like, I don't know, maybe the word is I'll never forget what he did versus forgive, because but I don't know if I'm in a space to say I forgive you for everything you did, because he's changed all of our lives forever.
Yeah.
With one choice.
Right.
One choice. Right. And I truly believe for people that are going through difficult times in their marriage, you owe it to your kids to try everything first. Right. I'm not saying stay for no reason or like just for children, but I will say there is definitely something in my mind that understands that person that waited until their kids were 18 and 20 to finally say, okay, I'm no longer dealing with your shit. I'm out.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah.
And I think that is, man, the ultimate sacrifice.
It is.
For yourself. Not saying it's right or wrong. I get why they do it though. And no judgment for that woman or man that stayed until their kids were old enough.
Right.
Because it really does affect every aspect of your kid's life. And Kylie and I have had our things too, right? Like one of the things I touched on earlier was 16 was rough. She, didn't want to be at my house, didn't want to do the chores. She wanted the car I gave her, right? The car I provided, but she didn't want to have any accountability or responsibility. And I'll never forget, she was like, you treat me like I'm your human house cleaner. And I'm like, Kylie, you do 2 chores a day. How do you think everything else in this home gets done? But she wanted to move to her dad's. And I had to say, okay, go ahead. And of course she would come back and be like, I don't want to stay there anymore. And I'm like, you don't get to this.
Yeah.
So you need to make a decision. Either we're 50-50 like we have been, and you're going to carry on that life. And she'll tell me to this day, Mom, I was a stupid teenager. But I had to let her realize how stupid of a teenager she was at that age. She was like, I was stupid and I didn't understand this. And I said, I know. But it's like when you fight against that as a parent, instead of just going like, no matter what, I'm not getting through. She's definitive in her mind and she's made up her mind. I have to let her trip on her own 2 feet. And I did. And our relationship now is so good. And her relationship with her dad is, it's not bad.
Well, right.
It's not bad, but it's definitely not where I hoped it'd be in her life right now.
Yeah.
And part of that is because she has a lot of resentment for the choices he's made, and he won't hash that out with her. And now Noah's moving into that spot of resentment and frustration.
Mm.
And
That was something that really helped me. One of my best friends telling me over and over again, they will figure it all out on their own. They will
yeah,
see it on their own. You don't have to tell them. They will see it all on their own. And
yeah,
that definitely happens.
it happens. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And then you're not the bad guy that planted all these
Mm-hmm.
seeds and hated their dad and made them feel a certain way. You
Yep.
get to just be the person that goes, I'm sorry that you're feeling that and that this is so hard for you now and that you're so frustrated. You get to be a little bit of a different person that
Yeah.
engages differently, and you're not the bad guy. And, Justin doesn't say bad things about me to my knowledge either, right? Like the kids have never been like, oh, dad said this about you. I think
Mm.
he's a little more honest with me when he says stuff like, oh, must be nice. You get to go on a trip again. Or, oh, yeah, you're.
Well, I mean,
And I'm like, and so instead of feeding into it, I just go, yeah, it's amazing. So you got the kids? Okay, great. Bye. Like, we're not entertaining this, right? Like, we're not gonna entertain your frustration,
very true.
or sometimes I'll throw a little jab in there and I'll be like, oh, choices make all the difference in life, don't they? Um,
Right.
but for the most part, I would say that we're good. Obviously, through this conversation, you can hear that there are some things that I'll just never be past, or things that
Mm-hmm.
I am still sad about or wish had been different. But knowing where I am today, and I think you can attest to this too. The boyfriend, so different than the husband, like in every way, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
this light's weird. He's like, oh, let me rip the light out of the wall and rewire it and fix this. And, oh, my car's making a funny noise. And he's like, nah, let me rip your engine out. And I'm like, who are you?
I know.
It is such a different experience for me. And I think whether I realized it or not, I always longed for that really, really, really masculine man,
Mm-hmm.
that can just
Yeah,
do
me too. Me
everything.
too.
You don't need to cook and clean. I got that. But can you
Yeah.
fix the washing machine?
Yeah.
Or, can you, I don't know, throw me over your shoulder because you can lift me?
I know. I
But I was
know.
like,
Yes.
and
No, I
and
love
I
all of that.
yeah, I think like, I didn't even know what I wanted at 16 and 17 and
Mm-hmm.
18. And
Mm-hmm.
I tell my daughter that today. She's in a relationship. She's been for 4 years. And I'm like, you don't have to be on the same hamster wheel mom was, because what you want today isn't what you're going to want at 25, 27,
Mm.
30, or even 40. What you want is going to change, and what you want in a man is going to change, because
Because you mature. You
and
mature and you realize and you practice and you learn and all, yeah.
in my marriage, I remember thinking that Justin was just the cat's meow, man. He was the best. He was
Yeah.
amazing, because for what I needed at that time, he was.
Mm-hmm.
He was a
So
good dad.
why wouldn't you, I love how you worded it, the boyfriend is better than the husband. I am married now to the boyfriend, but like why not marriage for you? Why not marriage?
I don't think not marriage. I just am not in any, I don't want to say a rush, because 10 years is a long time. But I
Yeah.
just think, and I think we've had our ups and downs that we've kind of worked through. And I think we still work through certain things.
Yeah,
And
and you will, obviously.
yeah, but I just don't think, I don't know. I'm not afraid of it, but I also don't feel the need to go and do it. And if anything was to not work between him and I, right? We don't have all the things that Justin and I had. We don't have the kids. We don't have all these things. I mean, we have a house together now, but I still have another house I can go back to or whatever.
Right.
But I think for me, it's just like we enjoy life together. We enjoy doing certain things together. But until I'm in a space where, God, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess just for me, I just have not felt like it's something that we need to put on our list. I don't know why. And it's
And that's
not,
okay. That's okay
he's
not
told
to
me
know
a
why.
million times, I would marry you tomorrow.
Mm.
I wear a ring because I don't want to appear to be single.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we're just not in the mode of like, let's rush out, let's get married, let's plan a wedding, even if it's just like a non-wedding wedding, like where we go down and just get married in front of the
Yeah.
court. No, I just I've just not been at that point, and not because I don't love him or care about him. I absolutely
Right.
do. I love our life together for the most part. There's little things,
All the time. That's always going to be a thing. Yeah.
But I mean, he's a good guy. He's good to my kids, and they didn't need a dad. They just needed another great person in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of nice because in some cases, I think the step parent has to swoop in and be dad of the year. And he really didn't need to do that for my kids.
Yeah.
He just had to be another good person in their life for additional guidance, or when their dad pisses them off, he can be like, oh, I'm sure dad, this and that. And like I said, we've always been in a really good space, which I wish Justin could understand what the difference between him accepting my boyfriend and me accepting his wife.
Mm-hmm.
He was a friend and an affair, and she blew in. And I don't think he steps back sometimes, and I wish he would. And I think my daughter did try to tell him this. She's like, can you even imagine what it would have been like for mom? Because there were things like school dances that we went to, and all of our kids were at the same school. So I'm in a school dance with my son, and she's at a school dance with her son. I could never escape it. It was everywhere.
Yeah. Wow.
So there was no like separation. It was really hard. But also I knew she was good to my kids. And I think that's one thing I wish more women and men could do. Is this person good to my children? Because ultimately that's all that matters. Was she the mom I think that they deserve? No. But was she good to my kids in the sense of making sure that they were happy and healthy and getting things they needed, and making sure if they had a doctor's appointment their dad couldn't take them to, that she did? Yes. She loved them, just maybe not how I would.
Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. So, and if we're honest, we don't really want them to, because then I don't know that I want anybody else to, Right. Tell me about the book that you mentioned also.
Oh, so I'm reading a book called Let Them by, I think it's Mel Robbins. I'm probably like butchering that. You'll have to look it up and see if that's what it is exactly. I can probably pull it up. But it is the most amazing book that helps with relationships across the board, family, friends. It's called Let Them. And I'm only like 3 chapters in, but so far I'm just like eye-opened experiences of let them. And the basis of it is like, if somebody wants to judge you, let them. If somebody wants to hurt you and say hurtful things, let them. If somebody wants to cheat on you and have an affair, let them. Don't try to stop it, because the more that you let somebody be their true self, you see that and you can move away from it and make a decision.
Love that.
So it's really great. It's like when you try to control too much, you're hurting yourself, and it's really just trying to let what's going to happen and let people be who they're going to be and show themselves to you. So it's a good book. I urge everybody to take a look and read it, because I am like, every chapter, I'm just like a bigger eye-opening experience. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I need to let that happen. I need to let them.
I love that.
So yeah, see if you get a chance to like look at it. I have it on audiobook, so I've just been listening to it like on my long car rides between hospitals and locations, but it's good. It's really good.
Thank you. I will definitely add that to the show notes.
Perfect.
I love that you came and talked to us about this. Thank you for being so vulnerable and open and sharing. Is there anything else that you had on your heart that you wanted to share, that you wanted to let women know? Like, is there anything else before we wrap up?
I mean, ultimately, like, you're not alone. And if you think you're alone, there's a community of people, you, me, anybody can reach out if they have questions, or even if they are just in a situation where they're having an affair. I'm not going to judge you. Like, if you feel like, we'll get to the bottom of where you're at in your life, like, we'll talk about it. I'm not going to judge you. I have had, other people I know from affair situations, and there's no judgment here. Just because it happened to me doesn't mean I'm going to judge you as if you're a horrible person for doing it. There's a reason behind people doing what they do. I can open the floor to like what it looks like on the other side.
Yeah, that's great. How can they reach you if she wanted to reach out to you?
You can put my stuff out there anyway. Phone number, Instagram.
So what's your Instagram, if you want to say it, and then I'll put it in the description. But what is it?
So let me make sure I give it to you
Because
exactly.
I don't remember. I think I know you were on
Like,
Facebook,
I
but
don't know. So it is. This is hilarious that I don't actually know my Instagram handle. It just goes to show you how much I'm out there.
that's
I'm not.
okay. That's
Um,
okay.
it's under rockstar
Oh
underscore
yeah.
reppin, REPN.
Okay. I'll put that in the
My
show in the show description and stuff. I'll
Yeah,
put that in there.
people can message me.
Yeah,
And,
message you, and then I think you mentioned people can email you. So
yeah,
I'll put the email in there. I love that you are making yourself available. And for those of you that are here and don't know, you can always reach out to me at I can't even say it. Flourishing Soul Collective. That's where you
yeah,
can find me. Or on my other personal one at I'm Angela Renee. I'm dot Angela Renee. So yeah, you can reach out and we're always there to listen. And I like how you said just because it happened to me doesn't mean I'm going to judge you if you're doing it.
yeah.
You can't have that. There has to be room to grow. And so yes, we are two people that if you are feeling alone right now, we are two people that you can come to. So I love that. Thank you, Jessica, so much
Of
for
course.
being with us today on a work day. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
I admire how much you have put into your life, the work you put in, the way that you have persevered, the determination that you have. I respect you. I love that you have friendships that have lasted since high school because I have too. Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay. That was my
My
life
dog,
just a moment ago. I get it. I was just like, can you be quiet?
no, my
No,
son came home and my dog is like, "Hi, he's home." He's so excited. But
perfect,
yeah,
perfect timing.
I
So,
know. Anytime. And
anyways,
thanks
thank
so much
you.
for having me on here. I really appreciate it. And I think everybody has a story to tell. So I look forward to the rest of your podcast this year.
Yay! Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. I'm really excited. And for those of you listening, thank you for joining us today. It's so awesome having people on. If you have a story you want to share, totally reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about your story and see if you can be on the podcast. And until next time, keep flourishing. Have a good one.